The billionaire CEO watched her janitor's scarred hands resurrect her dead helicopter in 25 minutes, something 3 certified mechanics had failed to do in 6 hours. When his 6-year-old daughter ran onto the rooftop and threw her arms around, Victoria Chun realized the invisible man she'd passed in the hallways for 18 months held the key to saving everything she was about to lose. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. The helicopter sat dead on the rooftop helipad like a wounded bird, its sleek black body glinting uselessly in the late afternoon sun. Inside the glass-walled executive office 40 floors below, Victoria Chun pressed her phone so hard against her ear that her knuckles went white. The board meeting was in 2 hours. 2 hours to get to Singapore, to sign the merger that would save her company from hostile takeover, to protect the jobs of 3,000 employees who trusted her to be invincible. And her only way there, the company helicopter that was supposed to have her halfway across the Pacific by now, was broken. "We've tried everything, Miss Chun," her head of operations said through the phone, his voice strained with the particular panic of a man who knew his job might end today. "The primary mechanic is out with the flu. The backup is stuck in traffic from an accident on the bridge. We've called every aviation service in the city. No one can get here in under 3 hours. The nearest commercial flight that could get you there in time is fully booked. I'm so sorry." Victoria ended the call without responding. She stood at her floor-to-ceiling window looking up at the helipad on the roof of her building. From this angle, she could see the pilot, Robert, pacing beside the useless machine, his hands gesturing helplessly as he spoke to someone on his own phone. She had built Chun Industries from nothing, from a tiny import-export office in Chinatown to a multinational corporation with offices in 12 countries. She had done it alone after her husband died, raising her company like some women raise children, with fierce, protective love and relentless determination. She had survived market crashes, corporate espionage, and boardroom betrayals, but she could not, apparently, survive a broken helicopter. The irony was almost funny. Almost. Her assistant, Jennifer, appeared in the doorway, her young face creased with worry. "Miss Chun, I've contacted every charter service within 200 miles. There's nothing. What do you want me to do?" Victoria took a breath, forcing herself to think past the rising tide of panic. The merger documents were ironclad, but they had a sunset clause. If she didn't sign by midnight Singapore time, the deal collapsed. Her competitor, Marcus Westfield, would swoop in with his own offer, and her company would be carved up and sold for parts. 3,000 people would lose their jobs because a helicopter wouldn't start. "Call Marcus Westfield," Victoria said, the words tasting like poison. "Tell him I'm delayed. Ask for a 24-hour extension." Jennifer's eyes went wide. "But he'll know we're desperate. He'll renegotiate. He'll take everything." "I know," Victoria whispered, "but call him anyway." After Jennifer left, Victoria sank into her leather chair, a piece of furniture that had cost more than most people's cars. She felt very small in it suddenly, like a child playing dress-up in her mother's clothes. She thought about her late husband David, who had always told her that her greatest strength was also her greatest weakness. She never asked for help. She never admitted she couldn't do something alone. "Well, David," she thought bitterly, looking at his photograph on her desk, "I'm asking now. I just don't know who to ask." On the rooftop, 50 floors above the city streets, Marcus Webb was finishing his shift. He pushed his maintenance cart along the edge of the helipad, collecting the day's debris. A coffee cup someone had left near the stairwell door, a crumpled receipt, a broken ballpoint pen. It was quiet up here, which was why he liked rooftop duty. Quiet meant he could think. Quiet meant he could remember without anyone watching. He had been a janitor at Chun Industries for 18 months. Before that, he had been a janitor at a hospital in Nevada. Before that, at a shopping mall in Colorado. Before that, in another life that felt like it belonged to someone else entirely, he had been Major Marcus Webb, the United States Army, chief helicopter mechanic for the 101st Airborne Division. He didn't talk about that life. He didn't talk about the 15 years he had spent keeping birds in the air in some of the most hostile places on Earth. He didn't talk about the medals in a box under his bed, or the nightmares that still woke him up at 3 in the morning, or the reason he had walked away from a career he loved more than anything except his daughter. His daughter, Lily. She was 6 years old now, with her mother's bright smile and his own stubborn determination. She was the only reason he got up in the morning, the only reason he had learned to live with the ghosts. He checked his watch. In 1 hour, he would clock out, take the bus across town, and pick her up from the after-school program. They would go home to their tiny apartment, and he would make her favorite dinner, grilled cheese with tomato soup, and she would tell him about her day with the breathless enthusiasm of a child who still believed the world was mostly good. He was thinking about this, about the simple, perfect routine of his small life, when he heard the voices, angry, frustrated voices coming from the helicopter. He looked up. The pilot, a man named Robert, who always nodded politely when they passed in the building, was standing beside the open engine compartment arguing with someone on his phone. "I don't care if you're in traffic. I don't care if there's an accident. Miss Chun needs to be in the air in 30 minutes or we're all fired. Find me someone who can fix this thing, now." Marcus stopped pushing his cart. He looked at the helicopter, a Bell 407, sleek and expensive. He knew that model. He had worked on dozens of them. He knew the sound they made when they were healthy, the particular rhythm of their rotors, the way the engine purred when everything was aligned just right. And he knew, Just from the way Robert was staring at the exposed mechanics with helpless fury, exactly what was wrong. It was the fuel control unit. He could see it from here, the way the housing was slightly askew, the telltale leak of hydraulic fluid that meant a seal had failed. It was a 30-minute fix if you knew what you were doing, maybe less. He should walk away. He should push his car to the service elevator, clock out, and go get his daughter. That was the deal he had made with himself when he left the army. No more helicopters. No more responsibility for machines that carried human lives. No more nights lying awake wondering if he had tightened a bolt enough, if he had caught a problem before it became a catastrophe. He had walked away from that life, and he was never going back. But his feet, apparently, had not received the message. He found himself walking toward the helicopter, his cart abandoned by the door. Robert saw him coming and waved him off impatiently. "Not now, man. I'm dealing with a situation here." "I can fix it," Marcus heard himself say. The words came out quiet, almost apologetic, but they hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. Robert lowered his phone and stared at him. "What?" Marcus gestured at the engine. "Your fuel control unit. The seal is blown. That's why it won't start. It's leaking hydraulic fluid into the combustion chamber. You need to replace the seal and purge the line. 30 minutes, maybe 40 if the parts are clean." Robert's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him, seeing him perhaps for the first time despite the 18 months they had shared the same building. "You're the janitor." "I used to be a helicopter mechanic," Marcus said. "Army, 15 years. I know this bird. I can get it flying." For a long moment, Robert just stared at him, suspicion and desperate hope warring on his face. Then he glanced at his watch, at the silent helicopter, and made a decision. He pulled out his phone and dialed. "Miss Chun? This is Robert. I know this sounds crazy, but I think I found someone who can help." 10 minutes later, Victoria Chun stood on the rooftop, the wind whipping her perfectly styled hair into chaos. She looked at Marcus Webb, this janitor in his faded blue uniform with grease-stained hands, and she felt the same desperate calculation she made in every boardroom negotiation. Risk versus reward. Trust versus skepticism. He met her eyes, and she saw something there that surprised her. He wasn't trying to sell himself. He wasn't trying to impress her. He just looked tired and a little sad, like a man who had been asked to do something he had promised himself he would never do again. "Can you really fix this?" she asked, her voice steady despite the hurricane of panic in her chest. He looked at the helicopter, and for just a moment his entire demeanor changed. The defeated slump of his shoulders straightened, his eyes sharpened with focus, his hands, which had been hanging uselessly at his sides, flexed with muscle memory. "Yes," he said simply, "but I'll need tools and parts. Robert has them in the maintenance bay, and I'll need you to not ask questions." Victoria felt a strange flutter in her chest, something she couldn't quite name. This man, this invisible janitor she had probably walked past 100 times without seeing, was looking at her helicopter the way a surgeon looked at a patient, with knowledge, with certainty, with the quiet confidence of someone who knew exactly what needed to be done. "Do it," she said. Robert practically ran to the maintenance bay. Marcus walked to the helicopter and knelt beside the open engine compartment. He rolled up his sleeves, and Victoria saw something that made her breath catch. Scars. Not the neat surgical kind, but the jagged, violent kind. The kind that came from shrapnel and fire, and the particular hell of machinery exploding at close range. His hands moved over the engine with the intimacy of a lover's touch, tracing connections, testing fitting, diagnosing the problem with a speed that spoke of thousands of hours of practice. Robert returned with a toolbox and a small parts kit. Marcus took what he needed without looking, his hands selecting wrenches and sockets with automatic precision. He worked in silence, his movements economical and sure. Victoria found herself unable to look away. She watched his hands as they loosened bolts, as they carefully removed the damaged seal, as they cleaned and inspected every component before reassembly. She watched the concentration on his face, the way his jaw tightened when he encountered resistance, the way his breathing slowed and steadied as he worked. This was not a janitor pretending to be a mechanic. This was a master craftsman doing what he was born to do. 25 minutes later, Marcus straightened up, wiping his hands on a rag. "Try it now," he said to Robert. The pilot climbed into the cockpit and hit the ignition. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the engine coughed, caught, and roared to life. The rotors began to spin, slowly at first, then faster, building to that distinctive rhythmic thump that meant everything was working, everything was aligned, everything was perfect. And Robert let out a whoop of joy. Victoria felt her knees go weak with relief. She looked at Marcus, at this man who had just saved her company, saved 3,000 jobs, saved everything she had built. "Thank you," she said, and the words felt absurdly inadequate. He just nodded, already gathering the tools, already retreating back into invisibility. "Wait," she called out, her voice nearly lost in the roar of the rotors. She pulled out her phone. "What's your name?" "Marcus Webb," he said. "Miss Chun, you need to go. You're going to miss your meeting." She wanted to say more, wanted to ask 1,000 questions, but he was right. She had 10 minutes to get in the air. She climbed into the helicopter, Robert already running through his pre-flight checks. As they lifted off the roof, she looked down and saw Marcus Webb standing alone on the helipad, watching them go, and she realized with a strange certainty that this was not the end of the story. It was the beginning. Victoria made it to Singapore with 20 minutes to spare. The merger was signed in a conference room overlooking the harbor, surrounded by lawyers and executives who had no idea how close they had come to disaster. She smiled and shook hands and said all the right things, but her mind was somewhere else. It was on a roof rooftop in San Francisco, watching a janitor's scarred hands bring a dead machine back to life. When she returned 2 days later, jet-lagged and exhausted, the first thing she did was call human resources. "I need the personnel file for Marcus Webb," she told the director. A efficient woman named Patricia who had worked for the company for 20 years. "He's in maintenance, custodial services." Patricia's fingers flew over her keyboard. "Marcus Webb, age 38, hired 18 months ago. Clean background check, no disciplinary issues, perfect attendance." Victoria leaned forward in her chair. "What did he do before he worked here?" Patricia scrolled through the file. Previous employment: janitor at Desert Springs Hospital in Nevada. Before that, custodial work at Meadowbrook Mall in Colorado. Before that, there's a gap. Several years with no employment history listed. "What about military service?" Victoria asked, remembering those scars, that confidence. Patricia clicked through several more screens. Nothing in the file. But employment gaps sometimes indicate military service, especially if the individual doesn't disclose it. "Would you like me to investigate further?" "No," Victoria said slowly. "That won't be necessary, but I want to do something. He saved the Singapore merger. I want to make sure he's properly compensated." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "What did you have in mind? A bonus?" Victoria said. "A substantial one. And I want to move him out of custodial services, find him a position in our facilities management department. Something with better pay, better hours, better benefits." Patricia made notes. "I'll draft a proposal. Will there be anything else?" Victoria hesitated. "Does he have family? Children?" Patricia checked the file. Emergency contact is listed as Lily Webb. Daughter, age 6. Mother is listed as Rachel Webb, but there's a notation here that they're divorced. He has sole custody. A single father, Victoria thought. Working as a janitor, raising a daughter alone. She knew something about that kind of burden. She had raised a company alone after David died, had sacrificed everything personal for something greater than herself, but at least she had money, resources, help. What did Marcus Webb have? A mop and a bucket and the weight of a child's future on his shoulders. "Make the bonus generous," Victoria said. "Very generous. And when you draft the new position, make sure it includes full benefits, education assistance for his daughter, everything we can offer." Patricia nodded, but her expression was thoughtful. "Miss Chun, if you don't mind my saying, this is very unusual. We don't typically promote janitors to management positions regardless of their other skills." "He saved the company," Victoria said, her voice flat and final. "That's not unusual. That's exactly what we should reward. Do it." After Patricia left, Victoria sat alone in her office, staring at the ceiling. She was thinking about the way Marcus had looked at the helicopter, the way his hands had moved with such certainty. She was thinking about the way he had asked her not to ask questions, as if his past was a door he had nailed shut and didn't want anyone prying open. She understood that. She had her own doors she kept locked, but she also understood that sometimes, whether you wanted it or not, the past came knocking, and when it did, you had to decide whether to open the door or pretend no one was home. Marcus picked up Lily from after-school care at 5:30, same as always. She came running out of the building, her backpack bouncing on her small shoulders. Her face lit up with the particular joy of a 6-year-old who had just learned something amazing. "Daddy," she shrieked, launching herself at his legs. "Guess what we learned today?" "What did you learn, baby?" he asked, scooping her up and settling her on his hip. "We learned about birds," she said, her words tumbling over each other in excitement. "Miss Sarah said that hummingbirds can fly backwards." "Backwards, Daddy, can you imagine?" He could imagine. He had flown in machines that could hover, spin, move in ways that defied what most people thought was possible. But he just smiled and kissed her forehead. "That's pretty amazing, Lilybine. You know what else is amazing?" "What? You? You're the most amazing thing I've ever seen." She giggled and wrapped her arms around his neck. "You say that every day." "Because it's true every day," he said, carrying her toward the bus stop. They rode the bus home, Lily chattering about her day, about her best friend Emma, who had shared her crackers at snack time, about the art project they were doing with Papier, MCH. Marcus listened to every word, asking questions, making her feel heard. This was his job now, not fixing helicopters, not serving his country, just this. Just being present for the little girl who depended on him for everything. Their apartment was small, a one-bedroom in a building that had seen better decades. Lily had the bedroom. Marcus slept on a pull-out couch in the living room. The furniture was second-hand. The carpet was stained, but it was clean and safe, and it was theirs. He made dinner while Lily sat at the small kitchen table doing her homework. Grilled cheese and tomato soup, her favorite. As he cooked, his mind drifted back to the rooftop, to the moment his hands had touched that engine. For those 25 minutes, he had felt like himself again. Whole, competent, necessary in a way that had nothing to do with mopping floors. It had been terrifying and exhilarating all at once. The next morning, Marcus arrived at work at his usual time, 6 a.m. He changed into his uniform in the staff locker room, grabbed his cart from the supply closet, and began his round. He was on the 32nd floor, emptying trash cans in the accounting department, when his supervisor found him. "Webb," the man said, slightly out of breath from hurrying. "You need to come with me. HR wants to see you." Marcus felt his stomach drop. This was it. They were going to fire him. He had overstepped, had touched company property he wasn't authorized to touch, had probably violated a dozen regulations he didn't even know existed. He should have walked away from that helicopter. He should have kept his head down and stayed invisible. That was the deal. That was how he survived. He followed his supervisor to the elevator in silence, running through the math in his head. He had maybe 2 months of savings if he was careful. He could find another job probably. Janitorial work was always available, But the gap in employment, the scramble to make rent, the fear in Lily's eyes when she realized they were in trouble again, that would be harder. The Human Resources office was on the 43rd floor, a place Marcus had never been. The carpet was thick and soft. The walls were decorated with tasteful art. Everything smelled like expensive coffee and success. Patricia, the HR director, greeted him with a professional smile. "Mr. Webb, thank you for coming up. Please have a seat." He sat in the chair across from her desk, his hands folded in his lap, waiting for the axe to fall. "Mr. Webb," Patricia began, sliding a folder across the desk toward him. "Miss Chun has asked me to speak with you about your actions 2 days ago on the rooftop. I understand you repaired the company helicopter." "Yes, ma'am," he said quietly. "I'm sorry if I overstepped." "I just thought you could help," Patricia interrupted, her tone neutral. "And you did. Miss Chun made it to Singapore on time because of you. The merger was successful. You saved this company a significant amount of money and potential hardship." Marcus said nothing. He had learned in the army that when you didn't know what to say, silence was usually the safest option. "Because of your actions," Patricia continued, "Miss Chun would like to offer you a new position. We're creating a role in our facilities management department, specifically overseeing the maintenance and safety of all company vehicles and equipment, including the helicopter. The position comes with a substantial increase in salary, full benefits, and education assistance for your daughter." Marcus stared at her. He had heard the words, but they weren't making sense. A promotion? From janitor to management? It was the kind of thing that didn't happen in real life, not to people like him. "I don't understand," he finally said. "Why would she do this?" "Because you have a valuable skill set," Patricia replied. "And because Miss Chun believes in rewarding employees who go above and beyond." She opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "This is the offer letter. The salary is listed here along with the full benefits package. I'll need your answer by end of business today." Marcus looked at the number on the paper. It was more than twice what he was making now. It was enough to move Lily to a better school district. It was enough to maybe finally stop living paycheck to paycheck with his heart in his throat. But it was also a trap. He could feel it. The moment he stepped back into that world, the world of helicopters and machinery and responsibility, the nightmares would come back. The memories would come back. The weight of knowing that one mistake, one missed detail could kill someone. That weight would settle back on his shoulders and never leave. He thought about the last time he had worked on a helicopter in the army. It had been a routine maintenance check on a Black Hawk. He had signed off on it, had watched it lift off from the base, had gone to lunch thinking about nothing more important than whether the mess hall would have the good meatloaf or the bad meatloaf. 2 hours later, the bird had gone down in a dust storm. Its mechanical failure, the investigation had concluded. No fault assigned, but Marcus knew he had been the last hands on that machine. He had checked the hydraulics, had signed his name on the maintenance log. 4 good soldiers had died. The army had cleared him. The investigation had cleared him. But Marcus had never cleared himself. He had walked away from his career, from his marriage, when Rachel couldn't understand why he had stopped sleeping, stopped talking, stopped being the man she had married. He had walked away from everything except Lily because she was the only pure thing left in his life, the only thing he couldn't fail. And now Victoria Chun was asking him to walk back. "Mr. Webb," Patricia said gently, pulling him from his thoughts, "I understand this is a significant decision. If you need time to think about it, I can give you until tomorrow." "No," Marcus heard himself say. "I appreciate the offer, but I can't accept it. I'm happy where I am." Patricia's professional mask slipped for just a moment, showing genuine surprise. "I'm sorry, I'm a janitor," Marcus said, standing up. "That's what I do. That's what I'm good at. Please tell Miss Chun thank you, but I'm not interested in the position." He walked out of the office before she could respond, before he could change his mind, before the part of him that wanted to say yes could overrule the part that knew better. He took the elevator back down to the basement, grabbed his card, and went back to work. But his hands were shaking, and for the rest of the day he couldn't stop thinking about the number on that paper, about what it could mean for Lily's future, and he couldn't stop thinking about Victoria Chun, about why a billionaire CEO would care enough about a janitor to offer him a second chance at the life he had thrown away. Victoria was in the middle of a conference call with the Singapore team when Patricia knocked on her door. She held up one finger, the universal signal for wait, and continued discussing quarterly projections with the CFO on the other end of the line. Patricia stood in the doorway, her expression troubled in a way that made Victoria's instincts prickle with warning. She wrapped up the call 5 minutes later and gestured Patricia inside. "He said no," Patricia said without preamble. Victoria blinked. "Who said no?" "Marcus Webb, the janitor. He turned down the position. He said he's happy where he is and he's not interested." Victoria sat back in her chair, genuinely shocked. In her world, people didn't turn down opportunities like the one she had offered. They fought for them, schemed for them, sometimes destroyed each other for them. But this man, this janitor with grease under his fingernails and scars on his hands, had simply walked away. "Why?" Victoria asked. Patricia shook her head. "He didn't give a reason, just said thank you, but no thank you," and left. Victoria stood up and walked to her window, looking down at the city far below. She was trying to understand the psychology of it, the calculation. Was he holding out for more money? Was it pride? Was it fear? She turned back to Patricia. "Fine, tell him I want to speak with him personally, before the end of the day." Patricia hesitated. "Miss Chun, with respect, He was very clear. Maybe we should just let it go. Let it go? Victoria's voice was sharp. He saved this company, Patricia. He has a skill set we desperately need. Our helicopter hasn't been properly maintained in months because we can't keep qualified mechanics on staff. They all leave for better paying jobs with airlines or private contractors. This man has military experience. He knows what he's doing. And he's already here. But if he doesn't want the job, Patricia began. Then I'll convince him, Victoria interrupted. I didn't build this company by accepting no for an answer. Find him. Marcus was on the rooftop again when she found him. It was late afternoon, the sun beginning its slow descent toward the bay. He was sweeping the helipad, his movements methodical and steady. The helicopter sat gleaming in its designated spot, the evidence of his skill humming quietly in its engine. He heard her footsteps and turned, his expression guarded. Miss Chun, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Mr. Webb, she replied, walking toward him. She had changed out of her business suit and was wearing simple slacks and a blouse as if she was trying to minimize the distance between. Patricia tells me you turned down my offer. Yes, ma'am, he said. She looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. Why? He leaned the broom against the wall. With respect, Miss Chun, I don't owe you an explanation. You offered me a job. I declined. That's my right. You're correct, she said. It is your right, but humor me. Help me understand why someone would turn down a job that pays twice their current salary, offers better benefits, and clearly matches their skill set. Because I'm not that person anymore, Marcus said, the words coming out harder than he intended. I'm a janitor. That's what I do. That's what I'm good at now. Victoria crossed her arms. That's not what I saw 2 days ago. What I saw was a master craftsman who knew exactly what he was doing. What I saw was someone who belongs in that world. She gestured at the helicopter. You can't tell me you don't miss it. Marcus felt something crack inside him. A dam he had built brick by careful brick. What I miss isn't relevant, he said, his voice rough. What matters is keeping my daughter safe and fed and happy. What matters is showing up every day and doing a job I can't fail at. You think you'd fail, Victoria said. It wasn't a question. It was a statement of understanding that cut right through his defenses. That's what this is about. Marcus looked away out at the city. I know I'd fail. I've already failed. I don't get second chances with things that matter. People's lives aren't experiments. Tell me, Victoria said, moving closer. When you worked on that helicopter, when you fixed it, did you feel like you were going to fail? Did your hand shake? Did you second guess yourself? He thought about it. About those 25 minutes when his hands had moved with muscle memory, when his mind had gone quiet and focused. No, he admitted. But that doesn't mean... It means you're punishing yourself for something, Victoria interrupted. And I don't know what it is, and maybe I don't have the right to ask. But I do know that whatever happened to you, whatever made you walk away from helicopters and the military and everything you were trained to do, you're letting it steal your future. And worse, you're letting it steal your daughter's future. The words hit him like a physical blow. Don't, he said, his voice dangerous. Don't bring my daughter into this. She's already in it, Victoria said, her own voice rising with passion. Every decision you make affects her. Every opportunity you turn down is an opportunity you're taking away from her. That salary I offered, that's a better school district. That's college savings. That's dance lessons or soccer or whatever makes her happy. I provide for my daughter, Marcus said, anger flaring now. We're doing fine. Fine isn't good enough, Victoria shot back. Not when you're capable of excellence. Not when you have skills that are rare and valuable and desperately needed. You're hiding, Mr. Webb. You're hiding behind a mop and a bucket, and I understand that. I do, but you can't hide forever. Marcus stared at her. This woman who had everything, who couldn't possibly understand what it felt like to carry the weight of death on your conscience. You don't know anything about me, he said quietly. You're right, she said, her voice softening. I don't. But I know what it's like to be afraid of failing. I know what it's like to lose someone you love and wonder if you could have done something different. She took a breath, and for the first time since he had met her, he saw past the CEO to the human underneath. My husband died 6 years ago. Heart attack. He was 42 years old. Healthy. No warning. He collapsed in our kitchen while making breakfast, and by the time the ambulance got there, he was gone. She looked at him, her eyes bright. For a year after he died, I couldn't make a single decision. I was paralyzed. Every choice felt like it could be the wrong one, the one that would destroy everything David had built with me. I almost lost the company because I was so afraid of failing him. Marcus felt his anger draining away, replaced by something else. Understanding, maybe? Or recognition. What changed? He asked. I realized that the biggest failure wasn't making a wrong decision, Victoria said. It was making no decision at all. It was letting fear turn me into something small and powerless. David didn't die so I could spend the rest of my life playing it safe. He died, and it was horrible, and it wasn't fair, but I was still alive, and I had a choice. I could honor his memory by being brave, or I could betray it by being afraid. She stepped closer to him. I don't know what happened to you, Marcus. I don't know what you're afraid of, but I see you. I see the man who fixed that helicopter. I see the father who shows up every day for his daughter. And I'm telling you that you're better than this job you're hiding in. The silence stretched between them, filled with the sound of the wind and the distant traffic 40 floors below. Marcus felt the walls he had built around himself trembling, threatening to collapse. If I fail, he said, his voice barely a whisper, if I make a mistake and someone gets hurt because of it, I won't survive it. Victoria, I won't. You're already not surviving, Victoria said gently. You're just existing. It's a difference. She pulled a card from her pocket and held it out to him. This has my personal cell phone number. Not my assistant's line, mine. The offer stands until the end of the week. If you change your mind, call me. Anytime, day or night. Marcus took the card, his fingers brushing against hers for just a moment. Why do you care? He asked. Why does this matter so much to you? She smiled. A sad, knowing expression. Because I've learned that the people who save you aren't always the ones you expect. Sometimes they're janitors who know how to fix helicopters, and sometimes they need saving too. She walked away, her footsteps echoing on the concrete rooftop. Marcus stood alone with the card in his hand and the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. He looked at the helicopter, this machine he had brought back to life with nothing but knowledge and will. He thought about Victoria's words, about hiding versus living, about fine versus excellent. And he thought about Lily, his bright, beautiful daughter who deserved more than a father who was merely existing. That night, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat on his pull-out couch in the dark living room and stared at Victoria's business card. He had placed it on the coffee table, this simple rectangle of expensive cardstock with embossed lettering. It seemed to glow in the darkness, a door to a future he had convinced himself was locked forever. His phone buzzed, a text from his ex-wife, Rachel. Brief and businesslike as all their communications had become. Lily's school is having a career day next month. They're asking parents to come talk about their jobs. Should I tell them you'll pass like usual? Marcus closed his eyes. Last year's career day, he had been invited to come speak about being a janitor. He had declined, telling himself that Lily understood that she didn't need her father to perform for her classmates. But the truth was simpler and more painful. He was ashamed of what he had become, ashamed of the gap between the man he used to be and the man he was now. He picked up Victoria's card and turned it over in his fingers. On the back, she had written something in neat, precise handwriting for Lily. He sat in the darkness for a long time, thinking about brave decisions and second chances, about the difference between hiding and healing, and somewhere around midnight he picked up his phone and typed a message to a number he had never expected to call. "This is Marcus Webb. Can we talk?" Victoria's response came within 2 minutes, which told Marcus she had been awake too, probably working through spreadsheets or strategy documents in the silent hours when the rest of the city slept. "Tomorrow morning, 7 a.m., there's a coffee shop on the corner of 5th and Market. Come alone, we'll talk properly." Marcus barely slept. He lay on his pull-out couch, staring at the ceiling, watching the headlights from passing cars paint moving shadows across the walls. He thought about the offer, about the salary, about what it would mean for Lily, but more than that, he thought about Victoria's words on the rooftop. "You're hiding." The truth of it had been like a knife between his ribs, precise and painful. At 5:30 in the morning, he got up and made coffee in the ancient machine that sputtered and hissed like it was angry about being awake. He showered and dressed in his civilian clothes, jeans, and a button-down shirt that was slightly too big because he had lost weight in the last year. In the mirror, he looked at himself and tried to see what Victoria Chun saw. Not a failure, not a ghost, just a man who used to be good at something and might possibly be good at it again. He left a note for Lily, who was still sleeping. Had to run an errand. "Mrs. Patterson from 3B will get you to school. Love you, Daddy." Mrs. Patterson was their neighbor, a retired teacher who had helped Marcus countless times when his schedule got complicated. She was part of the thin safety net that kept their small life functioning. The coffee shop was a small place, wedged between a dry cleaner and a bookstore that looked like it had been there since the 1950s. It smelled like fresh pastries and roasted bean, and it was nearly empty at 7 in the morning, except for a few early risers with laptops and tired eyes. Victoria was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. She had dressed down for the meeting, wearing jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a ponytail. Without the armor of her business suits, she looked younger, more approachable. She looked like someone Marcus might have been friends with in another life. He slid into the seat across from her and she pushed one of the cups toward him. "Black, 2 sugars," she said, "I guessed." He took a sip. She had guessed right. "Thank you for coming," she said. I wasn't sure I would either," Marcus admitted. She smiled at that, a small, genuine expression. "Honesty. That's good. Should start with that." She wrapped her hands around her own cup, the steam rising between them like a curtain. "Tell me about the accident." The words were gentle but direct. Marcus felt his chest tighten. "How did you know there was an accident?" "Because people don't walk away from careers they love without a reason," Victoria said. "And they don't carry the kind of pain I see in your eyes without something breaking them first. So tell me, what happened?" For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. He stared into his coffee, watching the dark surface ripple slightly from the vibration of a bus passing outside. This was the story he never told. Not to Rachel when she begged him to talk to her. Not to the army therapist who tried to help him process his trauma. Not to anyone. But maybe Victoria was right. Maybe hiding from it was worse than facing it. "It was in Afghanistan," he began, his voice low. 3 years ago, I was the chief mechanic for a unit operating out of Bagram. We had a fleet of Blackhawks, Apaches, supply birds. My job was to keep them flying." He took a breath. "One of our Blackhawks went down during a routine supply run. Mechanical failure. 4 soldiers died. The investigation cleared me. Said it was a freak combination of factors. Metal fatigue and a component that wouldn't normally fail. Stress from the dust and heat. Bad luck. They said I couldn't have caught it, that no mechanic could have. But you didn't believe them," Victoria said quietly. "I was the last person to touch that bird," Marcus said. I signed the maintenance log. I certified it as flight ready. 4 people got in that helicopter because I told them it was safe, and they died. He looked up at her, his eyes burning. One of them was 22 years old. He had a baby daughter he'd never met because she was born while he was deployed. He was supposed to go home in 3 weeks. Victoria reached across the table and placed her hand over his. The gesture was so unexpected, so human, that Marcus felt something crack inside him. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry that happened. The army wanted me to stay." Marcus continued, his voice thick. "Said I was one of their best. Said the investigation proved I wasn't at fault, but I couldn't do it anymore. Every time I touched a helicopter after that, I saw their faces. I heard the radio traffic from the crash. I felt the weight of knowing that maybe if I'd spent 5 more minutes checking that bird, if I'd been more thorough, more careful, more something, they'd still be alive." He pulled his hand away and wiped at his eyes roughly. "So I left the army, I left my marriage because Rachel couldn't live with the ghost I'd become, and I found work where I couldn't hurt anyone. Mopping floors doesn't kill people." Victoria was quiet for a moment, processing. Then she said something he didn't expect. "My husband's name was David. He was brilliant and kind, and he died in our kitchen because I was upstairs taking a business call." She looked at Marcus, her own eyes bright with tears. "For years, I tortured myself with that. If I had been downstairs, if I'd seen him start to have trouble, if I'd called 911 30 seconds earlier, would he still be alive?" The doctors said no. They said the heart attack was catastrophic, that there was nothing anyone could have done. But I didn't believe them, just like you don't believe your investigation. Marcus stared at her. "How did you get past it?" She smiled sadly. "I'm not sure I have, but I learned to live with it. I learned that guilt can be a prison, or it can be a teacher. It took me a long time to figure out which one I wanted it to be." She leaned forward. "Marcus, those soldiers died. That's a fact, and it's horrible, and I can't imagine the weight of that. But you didn't kill them. War killed them. Probability killed them. A combination of factors outside your control killed them. You were doing your job to the best of your ability, and sometimes that's not enough to stop tragedy." "But what if I make another mistake?" Marcus asked, the question that haunted him. What if I work on that helicopter and something goes wrong and Victoria or the pilot dies because I missed something? Then it would be a mistake." Victoria said simply. "Not murder. Not negligence, just human error, which is a risk we all take every single day." She counted on her fingers. "The engineers who designed my building could have made a calculation error. The chef who made my breakfast this morning could have given me food poisoning. The driver who brought me here could have run a red light. We trust people to do their best, and sometimes their best isn't perfect, but that doesn't mean they shouldn't try." Marcus felt something shifting inside him, like ice beginning to thaw. "It's not the same. Maybe not," Victoria agreed. "But Marcus, you can't live your life as penance for something that wasn't your fault. And you can't rob your daughter of opportunities because you're afraid of being human." She pulled out a folder from the bag beside her chair. "I had Patricia draw up a new contract, different from the first one." He opened the folder cautiously. The first page was the same offer, the facilities manager position with the substantial salary increase. But there were additional pages now, clauses he hadn't seen before. "Mandatory quarterly training and certification for all work on company aircraft," Victoria explained. "Monthly safety reviews conducted by an independent contractor. And this clause here," she pointed, "means that no maintenance work is ever signed off by just one person. Every job requires a second set of eyes, a second signature. You're never alone in the decision." Marcus read through the clauses, his hands trembling slightly. She had thought of everything, had built in safeguards, not just for the company, but for him, for his peace of mind. He started, his voice catching. "This is more than I expected. I need a good mechanic," Victoria said. "But more than that, I need someone who understands what it means to take responsibility seriously. Someone who won't cut corners or skip steps because they're in a hurry. Your fear, Marcus, your trauma, it's made you careful. And careful is exactly what I need." She reached out and touched the fold. "But I also need you to accept that you're human, that you're allowed to make mistakes, that you're allowed to live again. Can you do that?" Marcus thought about Lily, about the career day he always skipped, about the future he was denying them both because he was too afraid to step out of the shadows. He thought about the feeling of fixing that helicopter, the way his hands had remembered what his mind had tried to forget. "Yes," he said, the word quiet but certain. "I can try." Victoria's face broke into a genuine smile, the kind that transformed her from intimidating CEO to someone warm and real. "Good, because trying is all any of us can do." They spent the next hour going over the details of the position, the expectation, the schedule. Marcus would start in 2 weeks, which would give him time to transition out of custodial services and to arrange a better childcare situation for Lily. The position included flexible hours designed around school drop-offs and pickups. Victoria had thought of that too. As they stood to leave, Marcus found himself wanting to say something, to express gratitude that went beyond simple thank you. "Victoria," he said, and she turned back. "Why are you doing this? I mean, really. Is it just about having a mechanic? She considered the question, her head tilted slightly. No, she said finally. It's not just about that. She picked up her bag and met his eyes. 3 years ago, after David died, I was drowning. I couldn't see a way forward. I couldn't imagine a life that made sense without him. And someone, a friend I barely knew, sat with me one night and said something I've never forgotten. She said that the people we love don't leave us missions to complete. They leave us permission to keep living. Victoria's voice was soft but steady. I think your wife left you that permission, Marcus. And those soldiers, they didn't die so you could spend the rest of your life punishing yourself. They died in service, doing something they believed in. The best way to honor them isn't to hide from helicopter. It's to make sure that every helicopter you touch is as safe as it can possibly be. That every person who trusts you to do your job gets your absolute best. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. He nodded, not trusting his voice. Victoria squeezed his shoulder once, a brief connection, and then she was gone, walking out into the morning sun with the confidence of someone who knew she had just changed a life. Marcus stood in the coffee shop, holding the folder with his new future inside it. And for the first time in 3 years, he felt something other than guilt and fear. He felt hope, small and fragile, but real. When he picked up Lily from school that afternoon, she could tell immediately that something had changed. You look different, Daddy, she said, studying his face with her serious 6-year-old eyes. Different how? He asked. She thought about it. Like you're not sad anymore. Not all the way sad, anyway. He knelt down so they were eye level. Baby, how would you feel if Daddy got a new job? A better job? Her face lit up. Would we get a bigger apartment? Maybe would I get my own bathroom? He laughed, the sound rusty but genuine. Maybe eventually. Would you like that? She threw her arms around his neck. I just want you to be happy, Daddy. That's all I want. Marcus held his daughter close, breathing in the strawberry shampoo smell of her hair, and he made a silent promise to the memory of his wife and to the memory of those 4 soldiers whose names he would carry forever. He would try, he would be brave, he would live. Not because the past didn't matter, but because the future mattered more. Marcus's first day in his new position felt like stepping into a different universe. He arrived at Chun Industries at 7 in the morning, but instead of heading to the custodial closet in the basement, he took the elevator to the 45th floor where the facilities management department occupied a suite of offices with windows overlooking the bay. Patricia met him at the reception area with a warm, professional smile and a badge that identified him as Marcus Webb, Senior Facilities Manager, Aviation Division. The title felt foreign, like a coat that belonged to someone else. His office was small, but it had a window and a real desk and a computer that was newer than anything he had owned in years. On the desk was a stack of manuals for the Bell 407 helicopter, maintenance schedules, safety protocols, and a handwritten note on expensive stationery. Welcome to the team. My door is always open, Victoria. He sat in the chair and looked around at this space that was his, this evidence that he was more than invisible, and he felt a complicated mixture of gratitude and terror. What if he couldn't do this? What if he had been a janitor for so long that he had forgotten how to be anything else? A knock on his door interrupted his spiral of doubt. A man in his 50s with kind eyes and graying hair stood in the doorway. Marcus Webb. I'm Tom Harrison, head of facilities. Welcome aboard. We're glad to have you. They shook hands and Tom sat down, spreading a folder full of documents on the desk. Let me walk you through what we've got. The helicopter is your primary responsibility, but you'll also oversee maintenance on the company vehicles, the backup generators, and the HVAC systems for the building. We've got a team of contractors who do the actual grunt work, but you're the one who signs off on everything. Marcus listened, taking notes, his mind already organizing the information into systems and priorities. The helicopter needed immediate attention. According to the logs Tom showed him, it had been flying on the bare minimum of required maintenance for months because the previous aviation manager had quit and they hadn't found a replacement. It was a miracle nothing had gone seriously wrong. I'll need to do a complete inspection, Marcus said, his voice steady despite his nerves. Every system, every component. It's going to take time to do it right. Tom nodded approvingly. That's exactly what Miss Chun wants. She said you're authorized to ground the helicopter if you find anything that concerns you. No questions asked. Your judgment is final on all aviation matters. The trust implicit in those words was staggering. Marcus had expected oversight, second-guessing, corporate bureaucracy. Instead, he was being given authority and autonomy. It was both empowering and terrifying. Over the next week, Marcus threw himself into the work with an intensity that surprised him. He spent hours on the rooftop with the helicopter, going through every system with meticulous care. He found dozens of small issues, deferred maintenance, worn components, things that weren't yet dangerous but could become so. He ordered parts, coordinated with contractors, and slowly, methodically brought the machine up to the standard he had maintained in the military. The work was absorbing. When he was elbow deep in the helicopter's mechanics, his mind went quiet. The ghosts receded. There was only the machine, the problem, and the solution. It was meditation and therapy and redemption all at once. He barely saw Victoria during that first week. She was traveling, meetings in New York and London, putting out fires in various parts of her empire. But she sent him messages. How's the bird? You finding everything you need? Let me know if you hit any roadblocks. The casual tone of the text surprised him. She wasn't being his boss. She was being something else. colleague maybe, or a friend. On Friday afternoon, as Marcus was finishing up a particularly complex repair to the helicopter's navigation system, his phone buzzed. It was the school. "Mr. Webb, this is Principal Morrison. I'm calling because Lily had a small incident on the playground. She's fine, just a scraped knee, but she's asking for you. Can you come pick her up?" Marcus looked at his watch. It was 2:30, 30 minutes before school officially ended. In his old job, leaving early would have been impossible. But Tom had made it clear that Marcus's schedule was his own to manage as long as the work got done. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said. He cleaned up quickly, locked his tools in the secure storage on the roof, and headed out. As he walked through the lobby, he passed several people who had once looked through him when he pushed a custodial cart. Now they nodded, said hello, Mr. Webb treated him like he was visible. The change was disorienting. At the school, he found Lily in the nurse's office with a bandage on her knee and dried tears on her cheeks. She brightened immediately when she saw him. "Daddy!" she exclaimed, launching herself into his arms. He scooped her up, checking her over with the instinctive thoroughness of a worried parent. "You okay, baby?" "What happened?" "Emma pushed me," Lily said, her voice wavering between brave and tearful. "She said my daddy was just a janitor, and I said no, he's not. He's important. And she said I was lying. And then she pushed me and I fell." Marcus felt a complicated tangle of emotions: pride that Lily had defended him, anger at the casual cruelty of children, and beneath it all, a deep ache that his daughter had ever felt the need to defend him at all. He thanked the nurse, signed the release form, and carried Lily out to the parking lot where his car, a 15-year-old sedan that had seen better decades, was waiting. As he buckled her into her booster seat, she looked up at him with those serious eyes. "Daddy, are you ashamed of being a janitor?" The question hit him like a punch. "Oh, baby," he said, kneeling beside the open car door. "No, I was never ashamed of that. Being a janitor is honest work. It's important work," but Lily's eyes were too knowing. "Then why did you change jobs?" He took a breath, trying to find words a 6-year-old could understand. "Because sometimes we can do more than we think we can, and sometimes the scariest thing is trying. I was scared, Lily. I was scared to do the job I used to do because I thought I might mess up. But someone very smart helped me understand that being scared isn't a good enough reason to hide." "Who helped you?" Lily asked. "A woman named Miss Chun," Marcus said. "She's my boss now. She believed I could do more, and she helped me believe it too." Lily considered this with the seriousness she brought to all important matters. "Is she nice?" "She is," Marcus said. "She's very nice. Can I meet her?" Lily asked. "I want to say thank you for helping my daddy." The request was so pure, so full of 6-year-old logic, that Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Maybe someday, sweetheart. She's very busy. But I'm sure she'd like to meet you too." They drove home and Marcus made dinner, helping Lily with her homework while pasta boiled on the stove. It was their normal routine, but it felt different somehow, lighter, as if something heavy that had been pressing down on both of them for years had finally lifted. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Marcus sat on his couch and typed out a text to Victoria. "My daughter asked to meet you today. She wants to thank you for helping her dad. It's probably not appropriate, but I thought you should know." The response came quickly. "What's her name?" "Lily," he wrote. "She's 6. Tell Lily I'd be honored to meet her. How about Saturday? I usually work Saturdays anyway. Bring her by the office around 10. We can have a proper introduction." Marcus stared at the message, surprised by the immediate acceptance. "You don't have to do this. It's not part of the job description, I know," Victoria wrote back, "but I'd like to. I don't have children of my own. Closest I get is signing off on the employee daycare budget. It would be nice to actually meet one. See you Saturday." Marcus showed Lily the text messages the next morning over breakfast. Her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Really? I really get to meet Miss Chun?" "Really," Marcus confirmed. "Tomorrow morning, we're going to visit her at the office. What do you want to wear?" Lily took the question with utmost seriousness. "My pink dress with the butterflies," she declared, "and my white tights. And can I bring her a present?" "What kind of present?" Lily thought hard. "A picture. I'll draw her a picture of you fixing the helicopter, because that's how you met, right? She helped you remember how to fix things?" Out of the mouths of children, Marcus thought. "That's exactly right, baby. That's a perfect gift." Lily spent the entire day working on her drawing with the focused intensity she brought to her important projects. She used every colored pencil in her box, creating an elaborate scene of a man standing next to a helicopter under a bright yellow sun. The man had a smile on his face. Marcus noticed that detail and felt something shift in his chest. Saturday morning arrived cool and clear. Marcus dressed in casual clothes, nice jeans and a button-down shirt, and helped Lily into her carefully chosen outfit. She clutched her rolled-up drawing like it was a treasure map. As they rode the elevator up to Victoria's office, Marcus felt nervous in a way he hadn't expected. This felt significant somehow, this meeting between two of the most important people in his newly restructured life. Victoria's assistant Jennifer greeted them warmly and led them to Victoria's office. The door was open and Victoria stood as they entered, her professional mask softening into something more genuine. "You must be Lily," she said, coming around her desk with her hand extended. "I've heard wonderful things about you." Lily shook her hand with impressive formality, then immediately abandoned decorum and held out her drawing. "I made this for you, to say thank you for helping my daddy." Victoria took the drawing and unrolled it carefully. Her expression shifted as she looked at it, something vulnerable crossing her face. "This is beautiful, Lily. This is going right here. She walked to a wall behind her desk where a few framed certificates and awards hung. I'm going to frame this and put it right here where I can see it every day. Is that okay? Lily nodded enthusiastically. Daddy, can I see the rest of the office? There's a break room down the hall, Victoria said. Jennifer, would you mind showing Lily where we keep the good snack? Just for a few minutes while I talk to your dad. Lily looked at Marcus for permission. He nodded and she skipped off with Jennifer, already chattering about the tall building and how many floors it had. When they were alone, Victoria looked at Marcus and smiled. She's incredible. You're doing a great job with her. Thank you, Marcus said. She's the reason I get up in the morning. The reason I said yes to your offer. I know, Victoria said. She gestured to the chairs by her window. Sit with me for a minute. They sat and for a moment neither spoke. Just looked out at the city spreading below them. How's the first week been? Victoria asked. Overwhelming, Marcus admitted, but good, really good. The helicopter's coming along. I found a lot of issues that needed addressing, but nothing catastrophic. She should be in top shape by the end of next week. That's what I wanted to hear, Victoria said. She turned to look at him directly. Marcus, I want you to know that taking a chance on you was the best decision I've made in a long time. Not just because you're good at your job, though you are, but because you remind me why I started this company in the first place. What do you mean? Marcus asked. She looked back out at the city. I built Chun Industries because I wanted to create something that mattered, something that took care of people, that gave them opportunities, that made the world a little bit better. But somewhere along the way, it became about numbers and profit margins and market share. It became about winning instead of about meaning. She smiled. Then you came along, a janitor who saved my helicopter and turned down a promotion because he was afraid of failing. You reminded me that the people who matter most are often the ones we don't see, the ones who do their jobs quietly and care deeply and struggle with things we can't imagine. Marcus felt exposed under her gaze, but not in a bad way. More like someone had finally seen all of him and decided he was worth knowing. Thank you for that, he said quietly, for seeing me when I didn't want to be seen. Before Victoria could respond, Lily burst back into the office with Jennifer, her hands full of snacks and her eyes bright with excitement. Miss Chun, there's a helicopter on the roof. Can I see it? Can Daddy show me? Victoria laughed, the sound genuine and warm. She looked at Marcus with a question in her eyes. He nodded. We have time. The three of them took the elevator to the roof. Lily held Marcus's hand on one side and reached for Victoria's on the other, creating a small chain of connection. When they stepped onto the rooftop and Lily saw the helicopter up close, she gasped with pure wonder. It's so big. Daddy, you make this fly. This is what you fix. Marcus lifted her up so she could see into the cockpit. This is what I fix, baby. And yeah, it flies pretty far. Victoria watched Marcus with his daughter, saw the way he explained the helicopter's mechanics with patience and enthusiasm, and felt something unexpected stirring in her chest. Loneliness, maybe, or recognition of something she had missed. She had spent 6 years building walls around herself after David died, walls made of work and success and careful emotional distance. But standing here on this rooftop with the little girl's laughter echoing off the concrete, those walls felt suddenly thin. Lily turned to Victoria with a question that only a 6-year-old would ask with such directness. Miss Chun, do you have any kids? No, Victoria said, kneeling down to Lily's level. I don't. But I think if I did, I'd want them to be as brave and kind as you. Lily beamed. Daddy says being brave means doing things even when you're scared. Is that true? Victoria glanced up at Marcus, saw something pass between them, an understanding forged in shared experience. That's very true, she said. Your daddy is one of the bravest people I know. After they left, Victoria stood alone on the rooftop for a long time. The wind carried the smell of the bay and the distant sounds of the city, and she felt something she hadn't felt in years. A sense of possibility, of connection, of life happening outside the narrow confines of quarterly reports and board meetings. The following weeks fell into a comfortable rhythm. Marcus worked on the helicopter and the building's systems with steady competence. Victoria found herself manufacturing excuses to visit the rooftop, to check on progress, to ask questions she already knew the answers to. They developed an easy rapport, conversations that started with technical details and drifted into personal territory. He learned that she had grown up poor, the daughter of immigrants who ran a small restaurant in Chinatown, that she had put herself through business school waiting tables and had built her first company with a loan from a community credit union, that she still visited her parents every Sunday for dinner, and that her mother worried she worked too hard. She learned that Marcus had grown up in foster care, bouncing between homes until he aged out of the system at 18, that the army had been the first place he ever felt like he belonged, the first family he chose rather than was assigned, that his ex-wife Rachel wasn't a villain, just someone who had wanted a husband who could sleep through the night without nightmares, who could be present instead of haunted. They were both products of struggle, both survivors who had learned to build lives out of determination and sheer will. The recognition of that created a bond that went beyond employer and employee. One Thursday afternoon, Marcus was on the roof doing routine maintenance when his phone rang. The school. His heart immediately jumped into his throat. Mr. Webb, this is the school nurse again. Lily's fine, but she's running a fever. You'll need to come pick her up. Marcus checked his watch. 2 in the afternoon. He had a critical system check scheduled for the helicopter at 3, a final inspection before Victoria was scheduled to fly to Los Angeles the next morning. I'll be there in 30 minutes, he said, already gathering his He called Tom Harrison to explain the situation, apologizing for the interruption. Tom was understanding but concerned. The helicopter needs to be cleared today, Marcus. Miss Chun's meeting in LA is time sensitive. I know, Marcus said, frustration tightening his voice. I'll finish it tonight if I have to. Just let me get my daughter sorted. He picked up Lily, who was pale and feverish, her normal energy replaced by listless quiet. At home, he got her settled on the couch with medicine and her favorite blanket. Mrs. Patterson from next door came over when he called, agreeing to sit with Lily while he returned to work. I'm so sorry, Marcus told his daughter, guilt-eating at him. I have to go back to finish something important. Mrs. Patterson will be right here, okay? Lily nodded weakly. It's okay, Daddy. I know you have to make the helicopter safe. The trust in her eyes, even feeling as awful as she did, made his chest ache. Back at the office, Marcus worked with focused intensity. He went through every system, every check, every safety protocol. It was nearly 8 in the evening when he finally signed off on the inspection report. The helicopter was perfect, ready to fly, maintained to a standard that would have satisfied his old Army commanders. He sent the report to Victoria and headed home, exhausted and worried about Lily. She was asleep on the couch when he got there, her fever broken, Mrs. Patterson reading a book nearby. Poor thing, Mrs. Patterson said softly. She asked for you a few times, but I told her you were doing important work. She's so proud of you, Marcus. You know that? Marcus looked at his sleeping daughter, her small face peaceful now, and felt the weight of trying to balance everything. The job that demanded his focus and skill. The daughter who needed her father present and available. The constant fear that he would fail at one or both. That night, after Miss Patterson left and he had transferred Lily to her bed, his phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Got your report. Thank you for staying late to finish it. I know you had to leave for Lily. Is she okay? She's fine, he wrote back. Just a fever. It broke. Good, Victoria replied. Get some rest. And Marcus, next time something like this happens, tell me. We'll figure it out together. You're not doing this alone. The words settled something in him that he hadn't realized was unsettled. The next morning, Victoria's trip to Los Angeles went perfectly. The helicopter performed flawlessly, and she sent him a photo from the air with the message, "Your bird flies like a dream. Well done." But it was her next message, sent later that evening, that surprised him. I've been thinking, Lily's 6, right? Does she have anyone to watch her over spring break? It's coming up in 2 weeks. Marcus stared at the text. Spring break was indeed coming up, and he had been dreading it. His childcare options were limited and expensive, and taking a full week off from his new job felt impossible so soon. Not really, he admitted. I'm still figuring that out. What if she came to the office with you, Victoria wrote. We have that daycare center on the 3rd floor for employees' kids. It's not being used much lately because most of our employees with young children work remotely now. Lily could spend the days there, and you could visit her on your breaks. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the offer. That's too much. You've already done so much for us. It's not too much, Victoria replied. It's practical. And honestly, I wouldn't mind having a 6-year-old around to remind me what joy looks like. Think about it. He did think about it. He thought about it while making dinner, while helping Lily with her homework, while lying awake that night. And he thought about how Victoria had seamlessly shifted from being his boss to being something else. A friend, maybe. Or something he didn't have words for yet. When spring break arrived, Lily was thrilled with the arrangement. She got to visit Daddy's work, got to spend days in a bright, cheerful daycare room with toys and books and art supplies. Marcus would visit her during his breaks, and she would show him her latest creations with pride. And sometimes Victoria would appear, taking a break from her own intense schedule to sit with Lily and listen to her stories with genuine interest. One afternoon, Marcus came down to the daycare to find Victoria and Lily sitting on the floor together, building an elaborate castle out of blocks. Lily was explaining the architectural features with impressive seriousness, while Victoria nodded and asked questions like she was discussing a corporate acquisition. The sight made Marcus stop in the doorway, watching. There was something painfully beautiful about it. This powerful woman in her expensive clothes sitting cross-legged on a foam mat, giving his daughter her complete attention. Victoria looked up and caught him staring. She smiled, a soft expression that made her look younger, less guarded. Your daughter is teaching me about structural engineering, she said. Apparently I've been building castles wrong my whole life. That evening, after Lily had fallen asleep on the couch in his office from a full day of playing, Marcus and Victoria stood together in the break room making coffee. This has been really good for her, Marcus said. Having this time here, I can't thank you enough. It's been good for me too, Victoria admitted. She poured cream into her coffee, watching the white swirls disappear into the dark liquid. I didn't realize how much I missed having children around. The energy they bring, the way they make you see things differently. She looked at him over the rim of her cup. David and I talked about having kids. We were going to start trying the year he died. It's one of the big regrets I carry, that we waited. That I let work convince me to postpone something that mattered. You would have been a good mother, Marcus said quietly. The certainty in his voice surprised them both. You were good with her. Patient and present. That's what matters. Victoria's eyes glistened. Thank you for saying that. The air between them felt charged suddenly, full of unspoken things. Marcus was acutely aware of the small distance between them, of the way the dim light of the break room made everything feel intimate and separate from the rest of the world. He should step back. He should maintain professional distance. He should remember that she was his boss, and this was inappropriate and complicated and potentially catastrophic for the life he was trying to rebuild. But he didn't step back, and neither did she. Victoria, he started, not sure where the sentence was going to end. She set down her coffee cup and looked at him with an expression he couldn't quite read, vulnerable and hopeful and scared all at once. Marcus, she said, and his name and her voice sounded different than when anyone else said it. I don't know what this is, this thing that's happening between us, but I know I look forward to seeing you every day. I know that when something good happens, you're the first person I want to tell. And I know that I haven't felt this alive, this present in my own life since David died. He should be careful. He should think about the power dynamic, about Lily, about all the ways this could go wrong. But standing there in the break room of Chun Industries with his daughter sleeping down the hall and this remarkable woman looking at him like he was someone worth knowing, Marcus made a choice. He stepped forward and took her hand. I know exactly what this is, he said, and it scares me to death, but I don't want to run from it. Victoria's fingers tightened around his. I don't want you to run either. They stood there for a long moment, holding hands in the semi-darkness. Two people who had survived loss and fear and the long, slow work of rebuilding themselves. And somewhere in that moment, something shifted. A wall came down. A door opened. A future that neither of them had dared to imagine became suddenly terrifyingly possible. But neither of them knew that in 2 weeks, that future would be tested in a way that would force Marcus to confront his deepest fears. That everything they were building together would hang in the balance. And that the helicopter he had so carefully restored would become the setting for a crisis that would change all of their lives forever. The shift in their relationship was subtle at first. Victoria would text him good morning before his workday started. Marcus would bring her coffee when he knew she'd been in meetings all morning. They would find excuses to discuss maintenance schedules that could have been handled over email. Standing close together over blueprints and technical diagrams, their shoulders occasionally touching. The air between them hummed with possibility and restraint. They hadn't kissed. They hadn't defined what they were to each other, but everyone in the building could see it. The way Victoria's face softened when Marcus walked into a room. The way Marcus's eyes would automatically search for her when he entered the executive floor. Patricia from HR pulled Marcus aside one morning with a kind but firm expression. I need to have a conversation with you that's going to be uncomfortable, she said. She led him to a conference room and closed the door. Marcus, you and Miss Chun, whatever is developing between you, you need to be careful. The power dynamic here is significant. She's your employer. If this goes somewhere, there need to be proper protocols, documentation, transparency with the board. Marcus felt his face flush with embarrassment and something close to shame. I know how it looks, he said, but nothing has happened. We haven't crossed any lines yet, Patricia said, not unkindly. But you're going to. Anyone with eyes can see it. And when you do, I need you to tell me immediately so I can help you navigate it properly. The last thing either of you needs is a scandal or accusations of impropriety. She was right, and Marcus knew it. That evening, he and Victoria had dinner in her office. Takeout from a Thai place down the street, Lily coloring contentedly at the small conference table while the adults talked. We need to talk about something, Marcus said, his voice low so Lily wouldn't hear. Tricia pulled me aside today. About us. Victoria set down her chopsticks, her expression becoming guarded. What did she say? That we need to be careful. That there are protocols if this, he gestured vaguely between them, becomes something more. That the optics could be problematic. Victoria was quiet for a moment, staring at her pad thai like it held answers. She's not wrong. You work for me. That complicates things. Do you want to stop? Marcus asked, and he was surprised by how much the question hurt to ask. Stop what? Victoria said. We haven't really started anything. That's not true, Marcus said quietly, and you know it. She looked up at him then, her eyes bright with emotion. No, she said, I don't want to stop, but I also don't want to put you in a position where you feel pressured or where your job security depends on how you feel about me. That's not what this is, he assured her. Victoria, I'm not interested in you because you're my boss. I'm interested in you because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be seen, to be more than my worst mistakes. They talked late into the evening after Lily had dozed off on the couch about how to move forward responsibly. They decided to tell Patricia officially that they were exploring a relationship, that Victoria would recuse herself from any employment decisions regarding Marcus, leaving those to Tom and the HR department, that they would be transparent and careful and do everything by the book. It felt clinical and unromantic, but it also felt right, like adults making thoughtful choices instead of reckless ones. 2 weeks later, on a Wednesday morning that started like any other, everything changed. Victoria had an urgent meeting in Seattle, a crisis with a supplier that required immediate personal attention. She needed to leave within the hour. Marcus was in the middle of a routine inspection of the helicopter when Robert, the pilot, came running onto the roof, his face pale. Marcus, we have a problem. The backup pilot called in sick, and I just got word my mother had a heart attack. I need to get to the hospital. I can't fly Miss Chun to Seattle. Marcus straightened up from the engine compartment, his mind already racing through solutions. What about the charter services? Robert shook his head. Everything's booked. There's a tech conference in town, and every helicopter and small plane is already contracted. The soonest I could get her a charter is tomorrow morning, and by then the supplier will have signed with our competitor. Marcus wiped his hands on a rag, his heart beginning to pound. How long has it been since you've flown? The voice of his past asked. 3 years. 3 years since you sat in a cockpit. 3 years since you trusted yourself with a machine that carries lives. I can fly her, Marcus heard himself say. The words came out before his brain caught up with his mouth. Robert stared at him. You're a pilot? I was, Marcus said. Army, Blackhawks and Apaches mostly, but I'm certified for civilian aircraft. I kept my license current. He had actually paying for the biennial flight reviews and medical certifications even though he never planned to fly again. It was a remnant of his old life, a thread he couldn't quite cut. Robert looked torn between relief and uncertainty. Does Miss Chun know? Not yet, Marcus said. Let me talk to her. He found Victoria in her office, frantically trying to rearrange her schedule on 3 different phone calls at once. She looked up when he entered and he saw the stress written across her face. I heard about the pilot situation, Marcus said when she ended her calls. I can fly you to Seattle. Victoria blinked. You're a pilot? I was. Army. I'm certified and current. The helicopter's in perfect condition. Have you in Seattle in 3 hours. She studied his face and he could see her weighing the risks, the trust required. Marcus, are you sure? This isn't like fixing it on the ground. This is you in the cockpit responsible for. She paused. For my life. I know what it is, he said quietly. And yes, I'm sure. I wouldn't offer if I wasn't. The lie felt heavy on his tongue. He wasn't sure. He was terrified. But he also knew that she needed this, that missing this meeting could cost her company millions, and that sometimes love meant doing the thing that scared you most. Okay, Victoria said, making the decision with the same firm certainty she brought to every business choice. Let's do it. Give me 15 minutes to grab my briefcase. Marcus went back to the roof and ran through his pre-flight checks with hands that trembled slightly. He tested every system twice, his military training overriding his fear. Everything was perfect. The helicopter was ready. The question was whether he was ready. Victoria arrived on the rooftop with her briefcase and a small overnight bag. She was dressed in her armor, a sharp business suit and heels, her hair pulled back severely, but when she looked at him, her expression softened. You look terrified, she observed. I am, he admitted, but I'm also good at this. I know this machine. I know what I'm doing. She walked closer and took his hand briefly, squeezing it. I trust you, Marcus. Completely. Those 3 words gave him what he needed. He helped her into the passenger seat, making sure her harness was secure, and then climbed into the pilot's seat. His hands found the controls like they had never left. Muscle memory took over. He ran through the startup sequence, listening to the engine come to life with the particular sound he had spent weeks perfecting. Everything felt right. Everything felt familiar. They lifted off smoothly, rising above the city in the late morning sun. Marcus kept his focus narrow on the instruments, on the feel of the machine, on the rhythm of flight. For the first 20 minutes, he barely breathed. Then gradually something shifted. The fear began to recede, replaced by something else. Competence, certainty, the deep satisfaction of doing something he was born to do. This was who he was, not despite the fear, but because of it. The fear kept him sharp, kept him careful, kept him exactly as vigilant as a pilot needed to be. Marcus, Victoria said through the headset, and he glanced over at her. She was looking at him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You're smiling. He realized she was right. For the first time in 3 years, sitting in a cockpit with the controls in his hands and the sky all around him, Marcus Webb was smiling. I forgot, he said. I forgot what this feels like. Victoria smiled back. Good, I'm glad you remembered. They flew in comfortable silence for a while, the landscape passing below them in a patchwork of green and brown and blue. Marcus pointed out landmarks, explaining the flight path, falling into the role of pilot and instructor. Victoria asked questions and listened to his answers with genuine interest. This was different from their careful coffee shop conversations or their stolen moments in her office. This was them in a space where he was undeniably the expert, where she trusted him completely with something as fundamental as her life. It was intimate in a way that had nothing to do with romance and everything to do with faith. They were 40 minutes from Seattle when the warning light appeared on the dashboard. A small amber indicator that made Marcus's blood run cold, hydraulic pressure dropping in the secondary system. It wasn't critical yet. The helicopter had redundancies, backup systems designed for exactly this scenario. But it was the beginning of something that could become dangerous very quickly. Victoria saw his expression change. What is it? She asked, her voice calm but alert. We have a hydraulic issue, Marcus said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. It's not an emergency yet, but I need to land soon to check it out. There's a small airport about 15 minutes. I'm going to set us down there. He keyed the radio and contacted air traffic control, explaining the situation, requesting priority clearance to the nearest airfield. They granted it immediately. Marcus began the approach, his hands steady on the controls, his mind running through every scenario, every contingency. This was the nightmare scenario. Not a catastrophic failure, but something going wrong while he was responsible for someone he cared about. The landing was textbook perfect, smooth, and controlled. Marcus brought the helicopter down on the tarmac of a small municipal airport and immediately shut down the engine. His hands were shaking now, adrenaline and fear catching up with him. Victoria, he said, his voice rough, I need you to wait here. I need to check something. Are we in danger? She asked directly. Not anymore, he said. We're on the ground, we're safe, but I need to figure out what's wrong. He climbed out and opened the engine compartment with hands that had steadied now that he had a job to do. What he found made his stomach drop. A hairline crack in one of the hydraulic lines, small enough that it hadn't been visible during his ground inspections, but large enough that the pressure and vibration of flight had caused it to leak. If they had kept flying, if he hadn't noticed the warning light, if he hadn't acted immediately, the line could have ruptured completely. The helicopter would have lost control authority. They could have crashed. Marcus leaned against the helicopter, his legs suddenly weak. He had missed it. During all his careful inspections, all his meticulous maintenance, he had missed this one critical flaw, and it had almost killed them. Victoria came around the helicopter and found him there, his face ashen. "Marcus, what is it?" He showed her the crack, explained what it meant, what could have happened. His voice was hollow. "I checked everything. Was so careful. I don't know how I missed this." Victoria looked at the crack, then at him, then at the helicopter that had safely brought them to the ground. "But you didn't miss the warning light," she said quietly. "You saw it. You reacted immediately. You landed us safely. You did exactly what you were supposed to do." "That's not good enough," Marcus said, and 3 years of guilt and fear came rushing back. "Don't you see? I put your life at risk. I certified this helicopter is safe, and it was exactly what I was afraid. This is exactly why I should never have agreed to fly." He turned away from her, unable to look at the understanding in her eyes, unable to accept comfort when he deserved condemnation. Victoria stood behind him, not touching him, but present. "Marcus Webb," she said, her voice firm. "Look at me." He turned reluctantly. "We are alive," she said. "We are standing here, both of us, because you are a brilliant pilot who caught a problem and handled it perfectly. That crack is not your fault. Metal fatigues. Things break. That's why there are redundancies and warning systems and pilots who know what to do when something goes wrong. You did everything right, but what if I hadn't seen the light?" Marcus asked, his voice breaking. "What if I had missed it like I missed the crack? Then we would have found out what the backup systems are for," Victoria said. "But you didn't miss it. Because you're good at this, Marcus. You're exactly as careful and competent as you need to be." She reached out and took his face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I am alive because of you. Not despite you. Because of you. Do you understand?" Marcus stood on that small airfield with Victoria's hands on his face and let himself hear what she was saying. Really hear it. He had spent 3 years believing that the only way to keep people safe was to remove himself from any position where his mistakes could hurt them. But maybe that had been the mistake all along. Maybe redemption wasn't about never failing again. Maybe it was about failing forward, about learning and adapting and trusting yourself to handle the inevitable moments when things went wrong. "I'm sorry," he said finally, "for scaring you, for putting you at risk." Victoria dropped her hands but didn't step away. "You didn't scare me," she said. "Well, maybe a little when the warning light came on. But Marcus, I've been in scarier situations in boardrooms with people I trusted far less than I trust you. What you did today, recognizing the problem and landing us safely, that's exactly why I wanted you in this position. Because you don't cut corners. Because you care." She smiled. "And because apparently you're an excellent pilot." He laughed, a shaky sound that released some of the tension. "I used to be. I think maybe I still am." They called a repair service from the airfield and Marcus supervised while a local mechanic replaced the damaged hydraulic line. It took 2 hours, and Marcus inspected every inch of the work with exacting standards. By the time they were ready to fly again, he had regained his equilibrium. The rest of the flight to Seattle was smooth and uneventful. Victoria made her meeting with 30 minutes to spare and secured the supplier contract. On the return flight that evening, as the sun set over the Pacific and painted the sky in impossible colors, she said something that surprised him. "I wasn't completely honest earlier." "When?" he asked. "When I said I wasn't scared," Victoria admitted. "I was terrified when that light came on. Not because I thought you couldn't handle it, but because I suddenly realized how much I would lose if something happened. How much you've come to mean to me in such a short time." Marcus glanced over at her, saw the vulnerability in her expression. "I know what you mean," he said quietly. "When I realized what that crack could have done, first thing I thought wasn't about me. It was about Lily growing up without a father, and about you, about never getting the chance to see where this could go." "Where do you think it could go?" Victoria asked. The question hung in the air between them, heavy with implication. Marcus had been married before. He knew what love looked like, what it felt like, the everyday work of it, and the extraordinary reward. What he felt for Victoria was still new, still forming, but it had the weight of something real, somewhere good, he said, if we let it. When they landed back in San Francisco, the city lights spread out below them like a promise. Victoria reached across the cockpit and took his hand. "Then let's let it," she said. That night, after Marcus picked up Lily from Mrs. Patterson and got her ready for bed, his daughter looked at him with those 2 knowing eyes. "Daddy, you look different again." "Different how, baby?" he asked, tucking the blanket around her. "Like you're not scared anymore," Lily said. "Like you remembered something important." Marcus kissed her forehead. "I did remember something. I remembered that being afraid of making mistakes isn't as important as being brave enough to try, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." "Is this about Miss Chun?" Lily asked with the blunt perception of children everywhere. Marcus smiled. "Yeah, baby. It's about Miss Chun. I like her," Lily declared. "She's nice and she listens when I talk and she builds really good blockcasts." "Do you like her, Daddy?" "I do," Marcus said. "I like her very much." "Does that mean she's your girlfriend?" Lily asked, her eyes bright with interest. "Maybe," Marcus said. "Would that be okay with you?" Lily considered this with great seriousness. "Does she make you happy?" "She does," Marcus said. "Then it's okay," Lily decided. "You deserve to be happy, Daddy." The wisdom of children, Marcus thought. Simple and true and cutting right to the heart of things. Over the next few weeks, Marcus and Victoria stopped hiding what was growing between them. They followed Patricia's protocols, documented their relationship properly, ensured everything was above board and professional. But outside of work, they began building something that belonged just to them. Quiet dinners after Lily was asleep, long phone conversations about everything and nothing, stolen kisses in her office after everyone else had gone home. Felt like being young again, like discovering something precious and fragile that needed careful tending. Lily became part of their story too. Victoria would join them for dinner sometimes, bringing takeout and helping with homework, fitting into their small life with surprising ease. She learned that Lily loved strawberry ice cream and hated broccoli, but would eat it if you called it tiny trees. That her favorite color was purple and she wanted to be a veterinarian when she grew up. That she had nightmares about her mother leaving and needed extra hugs on those mornings. Victoria was patient and present and genuine, never trying to replace Rachel but carving out her own space in Lily's world. And Lily, with the open heart of a child who knew she was loved, welcomed Victoria in. One Saturday afternoon, 2 months after the incident with the hydraulic line, the three of them went to the zoo. It was Victoria's idea, a simple outing that felt monumental in its normalcy. They held hand, Victoria in the middle with Marcus on one side and Lily on the other, and wandered through the exhibits. They watched the elephants and laughed at the monkeys and bought overpriced cotton candy that turned their fingers sticky and blue. At the penguin exhibit, Lily pressed her face against the glass and watched the birds dive and swim with pure joy. "Miss Chun," she said without turning around, "can I ask you something?" "Of course," Victoria said, kneeling down beside her. "Are you going to marry my daddy?" The question stopped them both. Victoria glanced up at Marcus, who looked as stunned as she felt. Adults rarely had the courage to ask the questions that mattered most, but children asked them with the casual directness of people who believed in honest answers. "I don't know, sweetheart," Victoria said carefully. "We're still figuring out what we mean to each other. Your daddy and I care about each other very much, but marriage is a big decision." Lily turned away from the penguins and looked at Victoria with serious eyes. "My mom said she loved my dad, but then she left anyway because love wasn't enough. She said sometimes people aren't compatible." The word was too big for a 6-year-old, clearly something she had heard and memorized without fully understanding. Victoria felt her heart break a little. "Lily, I can't promise you what the future holds. Nobody can, but I can promise you this. I care about your father and I care about you, and I'm not going anywhere unless something really important changes. I'm here because I want to be here. Is that good enough for now?" Lily thought about it, then nodded. "That's good enough." She turned back to the penguins. "Look, that one's doing a backflip." Marcus met Victoria's eyes over Lily's head. In that look was gratitude and love and the acknowledgement of what she had just promised, not just to him but to his daughter. To both of them later that evening. After they had taken Lily home and she had fallen asleep exhausted from the day's adventure, Marcus and Victoria sat on his small balcony with glasses of wine and watched the city lights twinkle in the darkness. "She asked me about marriage," Victoria said. "I know," Marcus replied. "I'm sorry. She's 6. She doesn't understand boundaries." "Don't apologize," Victoria said. "It's actually the most honest question anyone's asked me in years." She turned to look at him. "What would you have said if she'd asked you?" Marcus was quiet for a long moment. "I would have said that I loved you," he said finally, "and that I'm not sure when that happened. Somewhere between fixing your helicopter and watching you build block castles with my daughter. But it's true. I would have said that I'd never thought I'd feel this way about anyone again after Sarah died, and that it's terrifying and wonderful, and I wake up every morning grateful that you saw something in me worth saving." Victoria felt tears on her cheek. "I love you too," she whispered. "I think I started falling for you the moment you turned down my first job offer. Nobody had ever said no to me before. Nobody had ever made me work for something that mattered." She laughed through her tears. "You were infuriating and noble and broken and perfect." Marcus pulled her close and she rested her head on his shoulder. They sat like that for a long time, holding each other in the darkness. Two people who had survived loss and fear and the long journey back to themselves. Neither of them said the word marriage out loud that night, but it hung in the air between them, a possibility that felt more real than it had any right to be. Inside the apartment, Lily slept peacefully, dreaming of penguins and cotton candy and the new shape her family was taking. She didn't understand all the complicated adult emotions swirling around her, but she understood the important thing. Her daddy was happy, and Miss Chun, who was becoming more than just Miss Chun, made him smile in a way that felt permanent and true. In his bedroom, tucked in a drawer beneath his socks and old t-shirts, Marcus kept a small velvet box that he had bought the week before. He wasn't sure when or how he would use it. He just knew that when the moment was right, when all the pieces aligned, he wanted to be ready, because some chances only came once, and he had learned the hard way that hiding from fear was the same as hiding from life. The moment would come sooner than either of them expected, in a way that neither could have predicted, because fate had one more test for Marcus Webb, one more chance to prove that he had truly overcome the ghosts of his past. And when that moment arrived, it would require every ounce of courage he had rebuilt, every skill he had remembered, and every reason he had found to believe in himself again. The helicopter, that machine he had restored with such care, would have one more story to tell. And this time, it wouldn't be about fixing what was broken. It would be about saving what mattered most. The call came on a Tuesday afternoon in late spring. Marcus was in his office reviewing maintenance schedules when his phone rang with Victoria's personal number. The panic in her voice made his blood run cold. "Marcus, I need you. I need the helicopter. Now. My father, he had a stroke. He's at Stanford Medical and they're saying I need to get there immediately. The traffic, I can't I need to fly. I'm on my way, Marcus said, already moving. 5 minutes. Meet me on the roof. He grabbed his flight gear and ran, his mind automatically shifting into emergency mode. This was what all his training had prepared him for. Crisis. Urgency. Lives hanging in the balance. He had the helicopter powered up and pre-flighted by the time Victoria burst through the rooftop door. She was still in her business clothes, but she had kicked off her heels and was running in stockinged feet, her face streaked with tears. Her mother was with her, a small, elegant woman in her 70s who Marcus had met twice before at Sunday dinners. Marseille Chun looked terrified but was holding herself together with the same steely composure her daughter had inherited. Marcus helped them both into the helicopter, securing their harnesses, speaking in the calm, authoritative voice that came automatically in emergencies. We'll be there in 30 minutes. Stanford has a helipad. I've already called ahead and they're clearing us for landing. Victoria grabbed his hand as he turned to climb into the pilot's seat. Thank you, whispered. He squeezed back and then he was all business, all focus, all pilot. They lifted off into a clear blue sky and Marcus pushed the helicopter to its maximum cruise speed. Beside him, Victoria was on her phone talking to doctors, getting updates. Her father was stable but critical. Its time mattered. They were 15 minutes into the flight, halfway to Stanford, when Marcus saw it. A small private plane about 2 miles ahead, flying erratically, its path wobbling in a way that made his instincts scream. He keyed the radio to the emergency frequency. Aircraft at heading 270, this is November at 4 Charlie Hotel. Are you experiencing difficulties? The response came back immediately, a young man's voice high with panic. Yes, I don't know what's happening. The engine's cutting out, I can't maintain altitude. I have my daughter with me, we're going down. Marcus's training took over. What's your aircraft type and current altitude? Cessna 172, he gasped. 3,200 feet and dropping. I can see a field, but I don't think I can make it. Marcus could see the plane more clearly now. It was losing altitude fast, its engine sputtering. Below them was nothing but dense forest, no good landing spots. If that plane went down in the trees with a child on board, the chances of survival were minimal. Victoria, Marcus said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Need to make a decision and I need to make it fast. That plane is going down. There's a chance I can talk the pilot through an emergency landing, but it means we'll lose time getting to Stanford. Maybe 20 minutes. Her father could die in those 20 minutes. But so could the child in that plane. Victoria looked at him and he saw everything in her eyes. The fear for her father, the trust in Marcus, the impossible weight of the choice. Do what you have to do, she said. Save them. Marcus switched frequencies and began talking to the panicked pilot. Okay, listen to me carefully. My name is Marcus. I'm a pilot and I'm going to help you. What's your name? Jake, the man said, his voice cracking. Jake Morrison. I'm a student pilot. I only have 15 hours. This was supposed to be my first solo cross-country, but my daughter begged to come and I thought it would be okay, and now we're going to die. You're not going to die, Marcus said with absolute authority. But I need you to listen to everything I say and do exactly what I tell you. Can you do that for me, Jake? Yes, the man said. Yes, okay. Marcus began running through emergency procedures, his voice calm and methodical. He told Jake how to restart the engine, how to manage his altitude, how to identify a potential landing site. He flew the helicopter in a parallel course, close enough to see the Cessna but far enough to stay safe. In the passenger seat, Victoria watched Marcus's work and understood with crystal clarity why he had been so afraid to do this again. The responsibility was enormous. One wrong instruction, one moment of hesitation, and people died. But Marcus wasn't hesitating. He was brilliant and focused and completely in command. This was who he was meant to be. The engine's not catching, Jake yelled over the radio. I'm at 1,800 feet. We're not going to make it. Yes, you are, Marcus said. I see a field at your 2 o'clock, maybe a mile ahead. It's small, but it's clear. You're gonna glide there. Kill your engine, restart attempts, and focus on gliding. Airspeed at 65 knots. Keep your nose down. I can't, Jake said. The trees. We're too low. You can, Marcus said. Trust your training. Trust the plane. I'm right here with you, Jake. You're not alone. For the next 3 minutes, Marcus talked Jake through the emergency landing with a skill that was part training and part instinct and part pure will. He could see the little girl in the Cessna's passenger seat, her face pressed against the window. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, maybe Lily's age. The thought of her gave Marcus a fierce determination. Not today. Nobody dies today. The Cessna dropped lower, clearing the last line of trees by what looked like inches. It touched down hard in the field, bouncing once, twice, then skidding to a stop in a cloud of dust. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then the pilot's door opened and Jake Morrison stumbled out, reaching back to pull his daughter from the plane. They collapsed in the grass, holding each other, alive. Marcus, Victoria breathed, her hand on his shoulder. You did it. He keyed the radio one last time. Jake, are you both okay? They're okay. Jake's voice came back, thick with tears. We're okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. I've called 911. Help is on the way. Get yourself and your daughter away from the aircraft in case of fire, Marcus instructed. And Jake, take a flying lesson from this. Check your fuel management better next time. The relieved laugh that came back told Marcus the young pilot would be fine. He switched frequencies and contacted air traffic control, reported the emergency landing, confirmed help was en route. Then he turned the helicopter towards Stanford and pushed it to maximum speed. They had lost 18 minutes. Victoria was on her phone again, getting updates. Her father was in surgery now. They were working to relieve pressure on his brain. Every minute mattered. Marcus flew faster than he should have, pushed the helicopter harder than was strictly safe, because sometimes the book had to take a back seat to what was necessary. They landed at Stanford Medical with the skids barely touching before Victoria and her mother were out and running toward the hospital entrance. Marcus secured the helicopter and followed, finding them in a surgical waiting room where Victoria's mother was, clutching her daughter's hand and praying in Cantonese. Marcus sat beside them and waited, because that's what you did for the people you love. You showed up. You stayed. 3 hours later, a surgeon in blue scrubs emerged with the news. Mr. Chun had survived. The surgery had been successful. He would need extensive rehabilitation, but he was going to live. Victoria collapsed against Marcus, sobbing with relief. Her mother touched his cheek with a trembling hand. "Thank you for getting us here," she said in accented English. "Thank you for everything." That night, after Mercia's, Chun went in to sit with her husband, and Victoria had finally stopped shaking. Marcus and Victoria stood on a small balcony outside the hospital cafeteria. The stars were out, bright and clear, and the night air smelled like jasmine from the gardens below. "I thought I was going to lose him," Victoria said. "When you stopped to help that plane, I thought those 20 minutes were going to cost me my father. But they didn't," Marcus said gently. "And that little girl got to go home to her family because we stopped. That's not a choice I regret." Victoria turned to look at him. "You were incredible today. The way you handled that emergency, the way you saved those people and still got us here in time. You're not broken, Marcus. You never were. You were just waiting to remember." He pulled the small velvet box from his pocket. He had been carrying it for weeks, waiting for the right moment. This wasn't the romantic proposal he had imagined. They were exhausted and emotional and standing outside a hospital cafeteria. But somehow, it felt exactly right. "Victoria Chun," he said, opening the box to reveal a simple diamond ring. Quote, "I spent 3 years hiding from life because I was afraid of failing. Then you saw me, really saw me. You didn't just give me a job, you gave me back myself." He dropped to one knee on that hospital balcony under the stars, the smell of antiseptic and jasmine in the air. "Today I saved 2 lives. But you saved mine first. I love you. I want to build a life with you. I want Lily to have a mother who understands her. I want to wake up every morning and choose to be brave because you taught me that fear is just a thing we carry, not a thing we have to obey. Will you marry me?" Victoria's hands were shaking as she reached out to touch his face. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Marcus. 1,000 times, yes." He slipped the ring onto her finger and stood, pulling her into his arms. They kissed there on the balcony, 2 people who had found each other in the unlikeliest of ways, who had been broken and had learned how to heal. When they finally pulled apart, Victoria was crying again, but this time with joy. "I need to tell my parents. My mother's gonna lose her mind. My father, when he wakes up, he's gonna wanna meet you properly. Give you the interrogation." Marcus laughed. "I'm a janitor who became a mechanic who saved his daughter's life. I think I can handle an interrogation." "You're not a janitor," Victoria said fiercely. "You're the man who fixed my helicopter, and my heart, and my life." They walked back inside hand in hand to tell Mrs. Chun the good news, to sit vigil beside a man who had become Marcus's father-in-law. And later, much later, they would drive home to a little girl who would wake up to find out that Miss Chun was going to become her mother for real. But first, they just sat in that waiting room, engaged and exhausted and grateful, knowing that they had survived the day that tested everything they were building together, and they had passed. Lily found out about the engagement the next morning when Marcus and Victoria came home from the hospital. She was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, when they walked in looking exhausted and radiant at the same time. Mrs. Patterson was making coffee and tactfully excused herself the moment she saw their faces. Lily looked up from her bowl and her eyes went immediately to Victoria's left hand. Her spoon clattered into the cereal. "Is that?" she started, her voice climbing with excitement. Does this mean Daddy, did you?" "I asked Miss Chun to marry me," Marcus said, kneeling beside his daughter's chair. "And she said yes, which means I need to ask you something very important. How would you feel about Victoria becoming part of our family? For real?" Lily launched herself at both of them, wrapping her small arms around their necks and squealing with pure joy. "Yes, yes, yes. Can I call you Mom? Can I be in the wedding? Can I wear a fancy dress?" The questions tumbled out faster than they could answer them, and Marcus met Victoria's eyes over Lily's head. This was their family now. Complicated and unconventional and absolutely perfect. The wedding took place 3 months later in a garden overlooking the bay. It was small and intimate, just family and close friends. Victoria's father gave her away, walking slowly but steadily with a cane, his recovery nothing short of miraculous. Lily was the flower girl, wearing a purple dress she had picked out herself, scattering petals with exaggerated care. Mrs. Chun cried through the entire ceremony. Marcus's friends from the army came, men he hadn't seen in years, who had flown across the country because Marcus Webb was getting married, and that alone was worth celebrating. His old commander gave a speech that was equal parts roasting and genuine emotion, talking about the mechanic who had been the heart of their unit and how proud he was to see Marcus Marcus flying again in every sense of the word. Victoria wore a simple white dress and carried wildflowers. Marcus wore a suit that Victoria had insisted on buying him because his only suit had been bought for a funeral, and she said they were starting fresh. When the officiant asked if anyone objected to the union, Lily's voice rang out clear and serious. "I object to waiting any longer. Can they kiss now?" The laughter that rippled through the guests was warm and full of love. When Marcus and Victoria finally kissed as husband and wife, Lily cheered louder than anyone. The reception was held in Victoria, now their backyard. They had sold her penthouse and his apartment and bought a house together, a real house with a yard and a swing set and enough room for a family to grow. Robert, the pilot, was there with his wife. Patricia from HR brought her husband. Tom Harrison gave a toast about how sometimes the best hires came from the most unexpected places. And Jake Morrison, the student pilot Marcus had talked down, showed up with his daughter Emma, who ran straight to Lily, and they became instant friends. Marcus found Jake during dinner, the two men stepping away from the celebration to talk quietly. "I never got to properly thank you," Jake said, "for what you did that day. You saved our lives." "You saved more than that," Marcus replied. "You gave me the chance to prove to myself that I could do the hard thing when it mattered, that I wasn't the failure I thought I was. So thank you for that." Jake looked confused. "Thank me? For almost killing my kid? For giving me the emergency I needed to face," Marcus said. "For trusting me when you had no reason to. For letting me be the person I needed to be." They shook hands. Two men bound by a moment of crisis that had changed both their lives. As the evening wore on and the stars came out, Marcus found himself on the rooftop deck of their new house, looking at the city lights. Victoria found him there, still in her wedding dress, holding 2 glasses of champagne. "Hiding from your own party?" she asked, handing him a glass. "Just taking a moment," he said, trying to figure out how I got here. From mopping floors to this. She leaned against the railing beside him. "You got here by being brave, by saying yes when it would have been easier to say no. By believing you deserved a second chance." "I think Sarah would have liked you," Marcus said suddenly. "My first wife. She would have appreciated how you see people, how you saw me." Victoria reached over and took his hand. "I wish I could have known her. She made you who you are. Part of who I am," Marcus agreed. "But you made me remember. There's a difference." They stood in comfortable silence, sipping champagne and listening to the party below. Lily's laugh floated up to them, bright and unself-conscious. She was teaching Emma some complicated hand-clapping game, their voices mixing with the adult conversations and music. A year later, Marcus stood on the rooftop of Chun Industries doing a routine inspection of the helicopter. It was early morning, the city still waking up, and he had the roof to himself. His hands moved over the machine with practiced ease. Checking systems, testing connections, signing off on another maintenance cycle. The work had become meditative again, a conversation between him and the machinery, a relationship built on respect and care and understanding. He heard footsteps and turned to find Victoria walking toward him, holding the hand of a small figure. Lily, now 7.5, was in her school uniform, her backpack bouncing on her shoulders. But it was the other small figure that made Marcus's heart expand. Sophie Chun Webb was 3 years old, with her mother's sharp eyes and her father's easy smile. She had been born a year after the wedding, a surprise and a gift that neither of them had been expecting at their age. But life, they had learned, didn't follow plans. It followed love. "Daddy," Lily called out. Sophie wanted to see the helicopter before school. Marcus set down his tools and walked over, scooping Sophie into his arms. "Hey, princess, you want to see what Daddy's working on?" Sophie nodded enthusiastically. "Big Bird," she said, pointing at the helicopter. "Daddy fixed Big Bird." "That's right," Marcus said. "Daddy makes sure the Big Bird is safe to fly." He carried her over to the helicopter and Lily followed, chattering about her upcoming science fair project. Victoria watched her family, these 3 people who had rebuilt her life and given it meaning beyond profit margins and market share. She pulled out her phone and took a picture. Marcus with Sophie in his arms, Lily standing on tiptoe to see into the cockpit. All of them framed against the helicopter in the rising sun. It was a moment of perfect ordinary happiness, the kind of moment that seemed small but contained entire world. Later, after they had dropped both girls at school, Marcus and Victoria stood in the parking lot beside her car. She was heading to a board meeting. He was heading back to the office to finish his reports. They had separate lives that intersected in 1,000 daily ways. "I love you," Victoria said, kissing him goodbye. "Come home for dinner. I'm making that pasta you like." "I love you too," Marcus replied, and he meant it with every fiber of his being. This life they had built, this family they had created, it was everything he had thought he lost when he walked away from the army. But he had been wrong. He hadn't lost himself. He had just been waiting to be found. As Victoria drove away, Marcus looked up at the building, at the rooftop where a helicopter sat ready and perfect, maintained by his hands, trusted with lives because he had learned to trust himself again. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, from the darkest moment of his life, standing in the wreckage of his career and his marriage, to this moment of quiet contentment. The ghosts were still there. He still remembered the names of those 4 soldiers. He still carried the weight of that Black Hawk going down, but he had learned to carry it differently, not as a burden that crushed him, but as a reminder of why the work mattered, why caring deeply and checking carefully carefully and never cutting corners was the difference between tragedy and triumph. He walked back into Chun Industries through the lobby where he had once pushed a custodial cart, invisible to everyone who passed. Now people nodded, said good morning Marcus, asked about his family. He was visible now, but not because of his title or his salary. He was visible because he had chosen to be seen, to step out of the shadows and claim the life he deserved. In his office, he found a sticky note on his computer monitor. Lily's handwriting, big and careful. Daddy, you're the best helicopter fixer in the whole world. I'm proud of you. Love, Lily and Sophie. He stuck the note on his bulletin board next to the picture Victoria had taken that morning, next to his pilot's license, next to a photo from their wedding. This was his life now. Evidence of love and purpose and second chances. That afternoon, Victoria's assistant called down to his office. Mr. Webb. Mrs. Webb, she's always correcting herself, needs you on the roof. The helicopter needs to be flight ready by tomorrow morning. Emergency trip to New York. Marcus grabbed his tools and headed up, taking the stairs because he liked the exercise and the moment to transition into work mode. When he reached the roof, he found not just Victoria but Tom Harrison and several board members standing near the helicopter. For a moment his old anxiety spiked. Had something gone wrong? Had he missed something? Then he saw their faces. They were smiling. Marcus, Tom said, walking forward with an envelope in his hand. The board wanted to present this to you in person. We're creating a new position, Director of Aviation Safety for all Chun Industries properties worldwide. You'll oversee not just our helicopter but our entire fleet of vehicles, our safety protocols, our emergency response systems. It's a significant promotion with a significant increase in responsibility and compensation. Marcus took the envelope, stunned. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Victoria said, stepping forward. Say you'll help us build the safest, most reliable systems in the industry. Say you'll train others the way you wished you'd been trained. Say you'll take everything you learned from your mistakes and your triumphs and use it to make sure what happened to you never happens to anyone else. Marcus looked at the helicopter, this machine that had brought him back to life in every possible way. He looked at the board members, at Tom, at his wife, who believed in him with a faith that still took his breath away, and he thought about the 7-year-old version of himself. The foster kid who bounced between homes, who joined the army looking for purpose, who became a mechanic because he loved the idea of fixing broken things. That kid would be proud of the man he had become. Yes, Marcus said, I say yes. The board members applauded. Tom shook his hand, and Victoria hugged him right there in front of everyone because their love was not a secret or a liability. It was the foundation of everything good in their lives. That night, at dinner with both girls chattering and laughing and spilling milk and being perfectly imperfect children, Marcus looked around the table and felt a completeness he had never imagined possible. This was redemption, not the absence of mistakes, but the presence of grace. Not forgetting the past, but building a future worthy of those who had been lost along the way. After the girls were in bed, Marcus and Victoria sat on their back porch under the stars. So, Director of Aviation Safety, Victoria said, leaning her head on his shoulder. How does it feel? Like flying, Marcus said. Like everything I lost finding its way back to me. Who would have thought, Victoria mused, that the janitor who fixed my helicopter would end up changing my entire life? Marcus smiled in the darkness. I think maybe we fixed each other. And that's exactly what they had done. Two broken people who found each other in the most unexpected way. Who chose courage over fear. Who built a family out of loss and hope and stubborn determination. The helicopter still sat on the roof of Chun Industries, perfectly maintained, ready to fly. But the real miracle wasn't the machine. It was the man who had learned to trust his hands again, the woman who had learned to trust her heart again, and the little girls who would grow up knowing that the people who save you aren't always who you expect. Sometimes they're janitors who know how to fix helicopters. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, they become the heroes who teach you that broken things can be beautiful when they're mended with love.